Welcome to StopFake, the place where we debunk disinformation about Ukraine and set the record straight. I'm Irena Chalupa with the 100th edition of our English language digest. The Russian disinformation machine never sleeps, and neither do we. This week, we examine two fake stories concerning the OSCE, inflated translations of a CNN story that makes Russia the key world player, and we look at claims of ridiculously high Russian beer exports to Ukraine. That and more in this week's digest. So, let's get to it. Russian media disseminated stories claiming that defense spokesman of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, Eduard Basurin, said that Ukrainian armed forces fired on OSCE monitors while they were conducting routine inspections on September 11th. In its activity report, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission makes no mention of being fired upon on September 11th, a day when the monitors were conducting crater analysis and observing damage to houses in Kruta Balka, Donetsk Oblast, an area controlled by the militants. The monitors recorded fresh impacts and damage to civilian houses, but did not encounter any gunfire. A separatist site called Moy Gorod Yasinovataya reported that Ukrainian forces shelled Kruta Balka on September 10th in violation of the Minsk ceasefire agreement. Ukrainian armed forces say they are adhering to the ceasefire strictly. StopFake has debunked previous fake claims of Ukrainian forces allegedly shelling OSCE monitors. The topic, however, remains a favorite of the Russian propaganda machine and their separatist minions. In another OSCE-related story, scores of Russian media reported this week that the organization had officially denied the presence of Russian troops in the occupied areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. RIA Novosti, REN-TV, Ruskaya Vesna, Pravda, and others all reported that during his recent visit to Donbass, OSCE Secretary General Lamberto Zanier confirmed the Russian army was not fighting there. Perpetuating the linguistic sidestepping that's become the hallmark of this conflict, Russian media cites Zanier, who said, "If people ask me, are there Russian units on the ground, and I ask my people, and they say there are no Russian units as such." Zanier, however, did not deny that Russian military were present in eastern Ukraine. What he said was that the OSCE monitoring mission could not confirm that they were Russian units. He also pointed out that in the occupied territories, there's equipment that keeps being renovated. An influx of military equipment never diminishes despite conflict and losses, and fuel and ammunition are always readily available. All this comes from somewhere, he pointed out. Fighters from outside the region don't deny they are not locals, but deny any official connections with Russian structures, Zanier said. Attempts to isolate Russia have led to increased Moscow influence in the world. And if Russia's president was isolated at the last G20 summit held in Australia, Moscow's influence on the world stage has grown so much that it is impossible to ignore it, declared Russia's international broadcaster, RT. RT uses a CNN story entitled "Russia to take center stage at G20 summit" as its source, which looks at how Putin is positioning his country in the world. In the CNN piece, journalist Matthew Chance first and foremost talks about Russia's increased military growth, its bombing campaigns in Syria, and Moscow's concentration of arms in Crimea and the occupied territories in eastern Ukraine. Russia appears to have staged a comeback on the global stage, transforming itself into a power the G20 simply can't ignore, even if they wanted to, Chance says. Chance concludes his story by pointing out that Russian concentration of troops and weapons in eastern Ukraine is specifically aimed at the West, lest it forget what an important player Russia is. And finally, beer. Russian media claim that Ukrainians are drinking tons of it. Russian national business daily Kommersant published a story this week claiming that beer exports to Ukraine had tripled in the first half of 2016. Exports rose from nearly 2 million to over 6 million liters. These claims, however, don't correspond with official Ukrainian import statistics, where there's no trace of Russian beer imports. Ukraine's trade ministry confirms that in 2016, no beer has been imported from Russia. None. Zero. Only at the very end of the Kommersant story do we learn that the beer in question can only be found in shops in the self-proclaimed Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics, in the occupied territories of eastern Ukraine. Unlike Kommersant, other Russian media chose to ignore this important detail, not mentioning that these exports are really contraband and violate an international embargo. Beer companies such as Ochakovo and Lipets Pivo, named in the story, denied they're exporting beer to Ukraine. But Russia's beer business publication Profi Beer writes that not only are these companies doing business in the occupied territories, they're creating special beer brands intended only for this region. That's it for this week. You can find more dissected disinformation on the StopFake website. Be vigilant, look out for fakes, and if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, send it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Irena Chalupa, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.